uniform. He is a man of great knowledge in the world of football, and he is our teammate, and he is joining us now here on The Fan in the Locker Room. He is former UGA quarterback Hutson Mason, who joins us via the Loud Security Systems News Maker line. Hut, happy Thanksgiving. How did it go for you and yours?
It went good. We just hung out here in Atlanta and had a good time. Family came over. Mom and Dad came over. So it was a good time. How about you guys?
An awesome one. You know you have a show open, right?
I do, yeah. I don't feel disrespected by any means.
All right. We're going to give everybody what they need as we now talk to our former Georgia quarterback and our always teammate, Hutson Mason.
He's a member of the 680 family and a damn good dog.
Hutson Mason, quick throw. Touchdown!
It's Hutson Mason, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia.
There you go. Now we can get things rolling as we get a chance to see Dogs and Bama once again. How do you feel after a 16-9 win? Look, you have to throw things out of the window when it is a rivalry game, and the way Georgia Tech's defense have been playing really all season the last 4 weeks, it just looked like Georgia was going to gas them. They didn't late in the ball game, and it ends up being a close game. What do you take out of that, even though Georgia got the dub?
Yeah, neither offense really had a great day. I think that's probably what surprised me the most. I thought coming into this game it was definitely going to be a shootout. You had two quarterbacks that had played at a really high level all year. At one point, both quarterbacks were being talked about for being in New York for the Heisman. And so to see, Gunner struggle throwing the football, 70 passing yards was weird. Even Haynes King offensively, it wasn't what we had saw all year. So you got to give some credit to what Georgia Tech did defensively. And then I also think, when after Gunner threw that pick earlier in the game, which was a bad decision, there's no doubt, it almost felt like Bobo kind of just took the ball out of Gunner's hand the rest of the day. And from there, I hadn't seen that really like the last month, and I really hadn't seen Gunner make that bad of a decision in a long time. But I don't know. It was a weird observation to just kind of watch. Quarterback makes a bad decision. It happens, but then it really felt like they just kind of took the ball out of his hands and said, hey, we're just going to run the football, throw screens, and, try to just get out of here winning this game, playing really good defense. So it was a weird day offensively for Georgia. If you're Georgia Tech, you feel like your defense did enough to give you a chance to win, but just a typical kind of Georgia win where they grinded out and found a way to win in the second half.
Hey, Hudson, Andrew Gardner, glad to have you on and glad to talk to you. Obviously, I watch a lot of Georgia Tech football as the Georgia Tech color analyst and not as much Georgia football from like how people have attacked Gunner. You as a guy that obviously has his finger on the pulse of Georgia in a way that I don't, do you feel like Georgia Tech did some different things to him to bring out those bad decisions, like either confused him or some things that other teams haven't done? So I guess my real question is, are you concerned that Alabama might try to do some of those same things, or do you just chalk it up to kind of a bad day? Because I agree with your assessment that they just took the ball out of his hands, because, again, when they came back to him later, they went quick 3 and out, and then he almost threw another pick when he threw that deep ball into double coverage. So I agree with you on Bobo.
You know what's interesting, Andrew, is I listen to Kirby's postgame pressers every week. One of the things he said this week that I had not heard him say at all the whole year when he was asked about Gunner's performance is he said he's got to do what he's coached to do. Like, that comment right there made me go, oh, hold on for a second. And I go, okay, there's more to that than maybe what the casual fan would just gloss over. He hadn't said that at all this year. And so it's just one comment, it's just one game, but I think when your head coach, who typically doesn't give you a lot in post-game presser, says something like that about the quarterback, that tells me that there were some times in that game where he was doing stuff that he was not coached to do. And so maybe for example, like the interception that he threw early on, it looked like it was kind of a drop 8 coverage. They're only rushing 3. I mean, that ball shouldn't have been thrown. It was never open to begin with. He kind of triple hitched into it and forced it in there. And so I would love to know more about what Kirby's referencing about that, but I thought that was a really interesting comment. And for sure, I'm sure Alabama's probably going to be looking at some things. I think what you try to sit there as a Georgia fan and go, okay, hey, the last month he's played really, really good football. Mm-hmm. And then he's got this one game against Georgia Tech where it was just kind of a weird, maybe off day. And so going into the SEC championship, what does Alabama try to take from the first game this year, and what do they maybe try to take from the Georgia Tech defensive game plan to mix it together to try to cause some more problems?
Hut, let's look ahead to the SEC championship game coming up on Saturday. A loss earlier this year for Georgia, 24-21, but it was kind of a funky game. Alabama 4th down and 3rd down and time of possession, the Dogs into oblivion. Gunner only had 130 yards in that game, and Ty Simpson really felt comfortable. But watching Alabama over the last month, their offense has really, really struggled. Do you feel confident that this will finally be the time that Georgia gets the Alabama bugaboo off their back?
Well, I don't know how you could say yes. I mean, earlier in the year you asked me, hey, does Georgia have an Alabama problem? And I said, no, it was a Nick Saban problem is what I said. And I was proved wrong about that. And we all know the record that Kirby Smart has against Alabama, and he's beaten everybody else except for Alabama. And I don't know how to explain it. I don't think Georgia fans can explain it at this point. It is what it is. And specifically, it's been Alabama in the SEC championship game. I think his record is 0-4, if I'm not mistaken, against Alabama in the SEC championship game. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know that I've seen something like this in sports, especially college football, where you've got one of the best coaches and teams that literally can beat anybody in the country except for just one team. And so, like, if you're a Georgia fan, of course, Georgia fans going to be walking around this week being like, oh, boy, here we go again. I mean, I've already been getting the text, and here goes Alabama. And so Georgia is just going to have to find a way to squash this narrative, and the only way they can do it is by finding a way to beat Alabama, specifically in the SEC championship game. I think what makes me feel encouraged is that if you go back and look, you give Kirby Smart kind of a second time through at a team, it's usually a really good thing for Kirby Smart in Georgia. And so one of the things that I think they've got to figure out is, hey, how do we get better pass rush on Ty Simpson this time around? Ty Simpson is maybe the best quarterback in the SEC, and he's playing really good football. They've got some injuries. Georgia has some injuries. Drew Bobo at center, Jam Miller at running back for Alabama. So this is going to be a great game. It's a great rivalry, but at this point, like, if you're asking me, hey, do I feel good? No, I don't feel good. I mean, I don't know, and I probably won't feel good until we finally get past the hurdle of beating Alabama and Atlanta for the SEC title.
Former UGA quarterback Hutson Mason joining us via the Loud Security Systems Newsmaker line. If Georgia wins, Alabama has 3 losses. Do you put them in or put them out of the college football playoff?
They got to be in. I mean, if there's 2 precedents that I think could be set that could be extremely detrimental to the college football playoff. One of them is if Alabama loses and they don't make it, because essentially what you're saying is you're judging Alabama, who would have played 13 games, versus the rest of the field that's only played 12. And so you're penalizing a team for essentially having to play an extra game. I don't know that's really the precedent that we want to set. And I don't think Greg Sankey sitting in Birmingham is going to want to see that either. And so that's the first precedent. Another precedent is the whole Miami-Notre Dame thing and the head-to-head. And do you put in a team in Notre Dame that maybe with some metrics looks better on paper with strength of record and things like that versus Miami, but Miami beat them head-to-head. And so those are the 2 things that I think are most fascinating heading into the final weekend of college football before the final playoff poll comes out is, to your question specifically on the team, I think Alabama's in. Whether they win or lose, the question was, what if they lose? I think they in. I think they should be in. But those are the 2 precedents that I kind of find, if they play out, the most fascinating.
Hutson, I'll add a third precedent. 2 years ago, Florida State was left out because Jordan Travis was hurt, even though the Seminoles were 13-0. What about the precedent that clearly is stated in the college football playoff guideline about coaches leaving? What do you do with Ole Miss?
It's a good call out. not only Lane Kiffin leaving, but Charlie Wise Jr., their whole offensive staff has been depleted. I don't know, man. That's, I think, I don't know if it's apples to apples with Florida State. Do you look at a team where a star quarterback is missing versus a star coach? Are those apples to apples? To me, it is not. I look at a team differently when a player is missing, especially a quarterback, a star quarterback versus even the head coach who calls plays. I know to some people they'll go like, hey, help me understand that. But when you have a player missing versus a coach, I still think there's a difference. And so and difference in how you impact the game. And look, Lane Kiffin is probably, you could argue, has more impact on the game and on his offense than any other coach in college football. So it's a good call out, Johnny. It's going to be fascinating. That's out there. That's what people are talking about.
Right.
So we'll have to see. But
and I was going to say,
I look at it a little different.
Hud, I was going to say, my retort to that, Florida State went 2-0, including a win against Florida. I know Florida wasn't great. And then a ACC championship game without Jordan Travis. And they had an elite defense. Elite. They had Jared Verse, they had Braden Fisk, Tatum Bethune, all those guys end up get drafted, and they made up a rule on the fly. That's the only reason I bring it up. Truthfully, Ole Miss should be in. I'll say that loudly for the Ole Miss people that want to get mad at us as every other college. I think they should be in, but the committee, to your point, has really backed itself into a corner with a bunch of these conversations.
For sure. And if you go back to that Florida State, I do remember, you mentioned 2-0, but offensively, it was really ugly.
Sure.
And so the committee had 2 games to sit there and go, wow, there is a big difference between this team with Jordan Travis and with not. At least with Ole Miss isn't going to have to put themselves out there and show the committee, hey, here's what we don't look like without Lane Kiffin. And so it's a little bit of theater of the mind for Ole Miss. I actually think that ought to play in Ole Miss's favor, and they'll put them in.
Fantastic stuff. We have championship week coming up and have some fantastic games as well. We look forward to catching up with you next week, Hut.
All right, guys, go Falcons.
Former UGA quarterback Hutson Mason joining us via the Loud Security Systems News Maker line.
We weren't even going to drag down the mood.
No, it wasn't. They lost.
Time to make a run.
And the special teams was a big part of it. And so was
a run
the
to
coaching.
38th in the draft. That's where they're trying to make
43rd is where we are. You're right. 38 would be great.
What's funny is there were people tweeting us last night, home team. You put your Sunday video out where you've got the big block of ice and you're pouring some bourbon or whatever you're getting into, and the Falcons are Falcon again. And there were people, literally, Andrew, that were tweeting us that were saying, please don't talk Falcons tomorrow. And I said, don't worry. They're like 8th on the rundown.
Yeah.
They will get a cursory glance today.
We'll throw them in this next segment, but only because there's another NFL franchise pointing fingers all over the place. We'll get to that when we return here in the locker room on the Fan, 680 and 93.7 FM.